Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about the digestive system. We're not going to get too far today. It's a lot going on. I'm going to do this in multiple sessions. So today we are going to start with the beginning of your digestive system, your mouth. Your mouth is the very beginning. That's where you're going to receive food and you're going to actually begin digestion. That's right. You actually start digesting food in your mouth. Before you think about that, let me differentiate these meanings here. People think digestion means to break down. It does not. Not literally. Like your teeth break down food. That's not digestion. That's a physical breakdown. Digestion is going to be a chemical breakdown and also a bit of absorption, but that's going to happen more in your intestines. There actually is a chemical breakdown. There's a chemical in your saliva called amylase that is used to chemically break down carbohydrates, right? Carbs are your energy food. So we need our energy to survive, and we're so desperate for that energy that we are designed to start breaking it down as soon as possible. So we begin digestion before we even swallow it. Your mouth is made up of these things right here. We got your lips, which I expect people know, your cheeks, which are a little off the picture, the tongue, the palates. Those of you in music class have probably heard from Ms. Dolan the palates, the hard palate and soft palate. Hard palate is up here in the front, soft palate is in the back. And yes, there is a texture difference. You can feel it. Your tonsils, which you can see two of them here, but you also have two more that you can't see. Talk about them a little bit. Vestibule. The vestibule is not actually a thing, it's a lack of thing. It's an empty space in between your lip and your gums, this empty space where you could probably store some food or store some chewing gum. That's your vestibule. And then, of course, your teeth, which are going to be the major chewing tool. So let's start with the cheeks. Made up of moist epithelial tissue. Remember, we had a whole chapter on epithelial tissue. That's the stuff that your skin is made out of. All right, your cheeks do have skin on your face. Beneath that is fat for storage and mobility and be able to move them around. And of course, muscles, which we have talked about back in the muscular chapter. Bring this picture up here. The masseter muscle used for moving your jaw up and down. Right? This is actually in your cheek, mixed in with the flesh. Back to that picture in a little bit, probably. Oh, too far. All right. The job of your cheeks, one is to store food. Also, it helps us talk, but that's not a digestive thing. Carnivores, it's a cool thing about your cheeks is carnivores and herbivores tend to have different kinds of cheeks. You see this dog, which is a carnivore, his cheeks go all the way back so that he can easily wrap his mouth around a bone. Get like really dig into that femur. Where herbivores and foragers have large cheeks to allow for extra storage. We as humans, as omnivores, are somewhere in between that. Where it said there are muscles, that masseter muscle I just showed you that helps you with chewing, bring your mouth open and shut. Again, also helps with talking. And it actually plays a part in helping show expression. And it's not the only muscle in your face that shows expression, but it plays a part. Your lips. I think many of us know what those are. Most people don't realize that they are also skeletal muscles. At least they include skeletal muscle. Go back to that picture. So we actually have the lips included in the muscle picture right here. They also, and this is the real important part here, house sensory receptors. And we'll come back to that in a second. They surround the opening of your mouth, used for helping keep your mouth open or shut if you need it to. Also used for judging temperature and texture. When you eat your food, you can actually keep yourself safe. This is your first line of defense against really hot foods. This guy is about to eat something really hot, put it against his mouth, and he could tell that it was dangerously hot before he swallowed it, and it was too late. That sensitivity is there to protect you. And like I said, has the ability to close your mouth, which some of you have some issues with, but practice makes perfect. Inside your mouth, you have your tongue. Very important skeletal muscle. In fact, it's the only skeletal muscle that is only connected on one end. Most of your skeletal muscles, like your biceps, have two connection points, the origin and the insertion, if you remember the skeletal chapter. Your tongue has an origin, which is where it anchors into your mouth, but not an insertion, meaning it doesn't have another anchoring point. It can move around freely, and we use that ability to help pronounce our words, create language. Also to help move food around your mouth. It's held down by a little folded membrane you can see right here called the frenulum. We actually have multiple frenula, one for your bottom lip, one up here for your top lip, but there's one for the tongue has kind of an important job. I don't know how true this one actually is. This is one of those myths that I haven't been able to confirm or deny quite yet, but apparently it holds a very important job in keeping your tongue down so that it doesn't go too far back and choke you in your sleep. But the reverse is absolutely true. I did some research on this. This is a condition called being tongue-tied, where the frenulum is, instead of being too loose like before, is actually too tight, meaning it's holding your tongue down too well, and you don't have the ability to move food around as easily. Eating becomes a challenge, and you don't have the ability to speak correctly. Pronouncing words become a challenge. So extra credit to anyone who can actually, first come, first serve, by the way, to anyone who can find information, like real information on whether or not having this frenulum here cut could become a choking hazard. I want legitimate sources on that one. This is a side view. So this is your chin, this is front teeth, and you see your tongue off on the side looks to be anchored down by that frenulum, keeping it from going back too far. This is a picture cut in half. So here's that tongue. If I were to take a knife and just cut it right in half, and you will see, just from all the fibers of this muscle, it anchors down to your jaw. So it comes right back up and has the ability to move around up here. The function is, other than talking, is to mix food with your saliva. You have all the saliva being made in your mouth, and when you're chewing the food, you need to mix that saliva into that chewed up food so that you have the ability to swallow it. Dry food does not get swallowed very easily. It's also going to have the job of moving the food toward the back of your throat. Go ahead, give that a shot. Try swallowing food right now. Go get a snack, or just swallow a spit in your mouth, and you can feel your tongue moving backwards to the back of your mouth. That is going to allow you to, multiple jobs. One, bring the food to the back. Two, your tongue presses up to the roof of your mouth, creating a seal. So it kind of like squeezes the food down into your throat, just like squeezing a tube of toothpaste. Other things about your tongue, they are covered in these tiny little bumps called papillae. We have multiple kinds of papillae. Foliated papillae on the side, circumvallate papillae in the back. We're not going to really talk about those today. We are going to be talking about the filiform papillae and the fungiform papillae. You can see the fungiform right now, these little circles in the front. You can't see the filiform papillae. They're almost microscopic. Those microscopic filiform papillae are going to add friction, control your food, where the fungiform contain your taste buds, allow you to taste your food. So here's a zoomed in cartoony picture. All right, we got the filiform, And I showed you this picture before back in the taste bud section, back in the senses section of the previous chapter, the nervous system, where I showed you these filiform, and I believe I showed you a picture of a cat. I didn't seem to find that picture today, but you can actually see a cat's filiform papillae, which is why their tongues feel like sandpaper. This is what's going to grip your food so you can move it to the back, where your fungiform papillae are, are what's containing your taste buds right down here, these little white dots. Right? If you remember the taste bud section, uh, all the food gets mixed with your saliva. The chemicals in your food get mixed in with the saliva, and that chemical rich saliva slides down here and interacts with your taste buds, which are a bundle of nerves. So those chemicals from your food are now touching those nerves, which sends a signal to your brain and tells you what you're tasting. The posterior region of the tongue, meaning the back all the way down the throat, has what we call lingual tonsils. You know, people think the tonsils are actually off on the side. They actually are. Those are palatine tonsils. We'll get to those in a little bit. But all the way down, you have another set of tonsils called the lingual tonsils. Those of you who are Spanish speaking in my class would recognize lingua, meaning language, to speak, right? Having to do with your tongue. Lingual in science and anatomy have to do with your tongue. So lingual tonsils are the ones that are directly attached to your tongue, slightly down your throat. All right, moving on to the palates, the hard palate and soft palate. And those are the two parts of the roof of your mouth, and actually is a texture difference. Hard palate is in the front, and you can feel that with your tongue. And go ahead and do that. And that's the part that you are making clicking noises with. Right? Your tongue presses up against that, and when it pulls back, it sucks air in. That's the noise. And you got your soft palate, which is going to have mobility, and that's going to be important. I was labeling that, sorry. So hard palate in the front, soft palate in the side, or in the back. Let's talk about that hard palate, the anterior part, meaning in the front. That's going to help shape your mouth. It keeps your mouth nice and round at the top. That way, when you close your mouth, it maintains its space. It doesn't cave in on itself. And it's going to help break down food. Next time you have a snack, in fact, pause this, go get a snack, anything, I don't care what, and start chewing on that. Right? As you are chewing the food, you can actually feel not just your teeth crushing the food, but also your tongue pressing that mashed up food up against the roof of your mouth. That's how you're going to mix the saliva into the food. You are actually folding the food and squishing it against the roof of your mouth, against your hard palate. You can feel all those hard ridges in the hard palate. That is going to allow to really break the food apart. Then in the back, your soft palate, all right here, you can almost see a color difference where it's lighter in front, darker in the back. That's not just shade, that's a texture difference too, causing a color change. And this is going to be used to help protect your nasal passage. We don't want food traveling up into your nasal passage through your nose. Some people have the ability to do that on command, by the way. Weird thing my sister was able to do when eating spaghetti was to kind of cough her pasta up into her nasal passage and then pull the spaghetti out her nose. Really gross, horrible dinner trick, but you know, also kind of cool. But the rest of us, this palate, soft palate, moves backwards, covers your nasal passage, that the upper part of your pharynx, and prevents you from getting food up there. The uvula is the part that really does that job, all right? There we go. That uvula, and this is the uvula's actual job, is to cover that nasal passage opening so nothing can get in there. I forgot I had the description right there. So there it is. When swallowing, the uvula covers the nasal passage. Right? No air in, no air out because it's covered up, but also means no food in or out. If food were to get up there, it gets stuck, it can actually start rotting. Then you got rotten food in your nasal passage. Not a good health thing. All right, so you take a look at this picture here. This is your food that you chewed up. We call that a bolus. Once it's all chewed up and filled with saliva, that's the official scientific name for your chewed up food. And you see, when you swallow, the tongue actually is going to move backwards and lift up and squeeze the food to the back. But it's also lifting up and pushing your soft palate, which causes your uvula and the rest of your soft palate to move backwards and up and cover your nasal passage. So the food has nowhere to go but down. And at this point, a whole nother series of muscle reactions is going to take place moving your food down, but we're going to get there in a different video. All right, lymphatic tissue. This is what the doctor looks at when they put that tongue depressor in, that popsicle stick. They're pressing your tongue down. They're trying to take a look at lymphatic tissue, meaning your tonsils. Right? This is part of your lymphatic system, your immune system. You recognize lymph, probably heard of your lymph nodes. I know you heard of lymphocytes. Those are your white blood cells. So all this has to do with your immune system. Lymphatic tissues can be containing macrophages and other white blood cells. Right? So when you eat food, these things are going to try to either collect all the bacteria and viruses and kill them, or let white blood cells out to kill it directly on the food. So it's going to help protect you from disease. If you ever had tonsillitis, like I said, it does collect bacteria. So it's kind of like a prison with a very high death sentence rate for the bacteria. But sometimes prisons get too full and it's easy for a prison break to happen. That's what tonsillitis is, right? You are overloaded with bacteria. Normally, doctors don't actually surgically remove the tonsils unless they have to. Usually some antibiotics will fix you up. Your lingual tonsils, we've already talked about, located posterior of the tongue, down the back of the tongue. So here's a side view picture going down the tongue over here. If you remember this trap door that protects your larynx, right? That is, when it's in the up position, it's blocking your lingual tonsils. That's what we're looking at. Then you got your palatine tonsils or palatine tonsils. I've heard it pronounced both ways. Right, off on the side of your mouth. When you have tonsillitis, these are the ones that are easiest to see. They swell up and look like they get kind of marbled in white fat. That's not fat, that's immune white cells. Here they are blown up in a real picture, and yet you can actually see some white. This is actually not the worst I've seen. And some back here too. And the pharyngeal tonsils up in your pharynx. Going back to the side view picture again, here's your palatine tonsils, lingual tonsils. Go back up past that uvula into your upper pharynx, just behind your nasal cavity, and you got the pharyngeal tonsils, right? Those are your three kinds of tonsils. Palatine, which you have two of them, lingual, which you have one, and pharyngeal, which you have one. Remember those words. Vestibule, we've already talked about, is just an empty space, right? It's not an actual thing. It is a lack of thing. It's a storage area. You can keep food there. People have kept gum off on the side there. People who chew tobacco, or not the chewing kind, but the kind that you just kind of leave in your mouth, keep it there. There's also, this space allows the ability for your lips to move when you're talking. Right? So it has multiple purposes there. All right, and teeth. This is what we're going to end on. We're going to end this video talking about your teeth. And adults have 32 teeth. Children have less than that because they have smaller mouths. That's why the baby teeth need to fall out and get replaced. 32 adult teeth include 8 incisors. Kind of like shovels. That's where you dig into the food. That's where you use to shovel corn off the cob, or get a first bite of pizza, something that's going to shovel the food into your mouth. Then next to that are your canines. We humans do not have very sharp canines, not compared to the carnivores. Uh, in fact, not wolves, dogs are named after those teeth, the canine teeth. We also refer to them as cuspids. So I don't care which word you use, canine or cuspid, uh, both the same thing. These are pointy cone-shaped ones, and they are used for ripping and tearing, which is why they're so much bigger on the carnivores. They're going to grip onto meat and rip it right off the bone. And as humans, we cook our food, which lessens the strength of the tendons and ligaments. So our incisors can also be used to rip it off the bone. But for raw meat, the tendons and ligaments are very strong, and you need something with better grip and better strength. So canines for that. Again, dogs having much larger canines. Uh, Here we go. And then we got premolars, which you can also refer to as bicuspids. They're the same thing. So you got your cuspids, and then behind them are your bicuspids. Or you can call them premolars because they come just before your molars. Those are your molars there. So premolars, mouth disappeared for a second. Premolars and molars. They're flat and they're used for grinding. And these are the teeth that herbivores like to use a lot. All right, whenever you see a cow chewing, if you ever seen it, look it up and see if I can find a video of it someplace. But when they chew side to side, not up and down. And take a look at yourself in the mirror next time you chew food. Realize you also chew side to side, just not as obvious as a cow. Right? Because up and down crushes, side to side grinds. And that's what your molars and premolars are for, grinding the food to a pulp. And this is a zoomed in picture of a molar. Right? Your tooth, your molars have two main parts, the crown and the root. The crown is the tough part. It's actually made out of the toughest material in your body called enamel, stronger than bone. Your teeth are not bones. I should have pointed that out earlier. They're not bone. They're not made out of the same material as bone at all. They don't have bone marrow. They are something different. They're stronger than bone. And then you have the crown is the toughest part. And then the neck is more of a transition area. It's not really its own thing. And then you got, the root, which is what connects it to your gums, to your jaw. The teeth have layers. The enamel I said earlier, this is the strongest material the human body has the ability to produce. Right? Strongest substance in your body, stronger than bone. And because it's so strong, it's so dense, so tough, it's also very hard to replace. So if you wear your enamel down, you're pretty much stuck with it that way. So if you get a cavity, dentists can't just clean it out and hope you replace it. You won't replace it. They have to fill it up. That's what getting a cavity filled is. They fill it with some kind of material similar to it. They used to use metal when I was a kid, but now they have some new material. I'm not sure what it's made out of. Underneath that is called dentine. It's the strongest, second strongest stuff in your body. Not as strong as enamel, but still stronger than bone. However, this stuff does break down chemically very easily, right? It's tough against impact, but weak against acids. So when you wear your enamel down and you start eating and drinking stuff that have high acidity, like soda or orange juice, you can really start wearing that dentine down. And the dentin, you may recognize that word. You guys ever had dentine gum? That is named after that because they always claim that it's like good for your teeth to chew that gum. It's not good for your teeth, guys. It's gum. It has sugar in it. Even if it's fake sugar, it's still not good for you. Right. And then inside, you have this hollow space. Your teeth are hollow. Right? Remember, There's no such thing as a truly hollow space in your body. All hollow spaces get filled with something, right? So this hollow cavity in the middle of your tooth is filled with blood vessels and nerves and connective tissue, right? And that's what's holding your teeth down, right? Not just being anchored in by the root, but also being held down by the connective tissue. And you got, again, blood vessels and nerves. Very, very sensitive nerves. If you get a cavity and you work your way all the way down, just air. If you ever had a cavity, you would feel that. You would remember that. Just breathing, having moving air touching that nerve is one of the most painful things. And in that root, we have this area called a root canal. That's right, guys. Root canal is not just a surgical procedure dentists do on you. We also use that word to name this area. Right? It is a passageway for this pulp, which is what we call the blood vessels and the nerves and the connective tissue. That's called pulp. It is a passageway for the pulp to connect to the rest of your body. Right? All that pulp goes through the root. So it's a canal, like a water canal. It's just a root canal through the root. Right? And that was the last slide. All right, guys, so next time we are going to move away from the mouth and continue down with the rest of the digestive system and we'll find out what happens to the food that you've swallowed. Until then, have a nice day.